When I get older, losing my hair, so many years from now, will you still be sending me a Valentine? Birthday greetings, bottle of wine.
My name is John Lutz. I'm the Executive Director of Elder Services of Berkshire County, and this is Berkshire Senior TV. Thank you for watching. Today we have a guest that's very timely, not a snowman or a snow removal expert, but a tax expert. And we're going to talk about taxes a little bit today and where you can get some assistance. And I have with me today Ron Terry from the AARP Tax Aid Program. This is an annual guest for us. We've always had, around this time of year, we try to have tax folks. So Ron, maybe just to start with kind of the big picture question is, what is the AARP Tax Aid Program?
That program is set up to assist low to moderate income seniors in the preparation and submission of their tax returns. And it's a free service to anyone that we provide the service to. But it's not limited. It's not limited to seniors. It's not limited to any particular set of income. As long as there's availability of counselors and time positions at a senior center, we'll do a return.
So let's just pick up a couple things out of your response. One is free.
Free, yes.
So folks should know that they can come and get free assistance. Second is based upon availability. This is a volunteer-oriented program, so maybe talk about that a little bit.
Yes, we have between 25 and 30 volunteers in Berkshire County. We're at several senior centers, and I'll just go down the list quickly. It's Williamstown, North Adams, Dalton, Pittsfield, Lee, Lenox, and Great Barrington.
Okay.
And the numbers of counselors at those locations also varies from 2 or 3 to maybe 5 or 6. So all of the work that we do at each of these locations is by appointment. The appointments are from an hour to an hour and a half, and generally speaking, the senior centers provide us a service in taking those appointments and allocating individuals to time slots. So we know going into it that we have, say 3 people at the first hour and 3 people in the next hour, and sometimes, pretty frequently, people don't show up for an appointment. Now, there's various reasons, illness, weather, whatnot, so it's not infrequent that a late caller can still get an appointment.
So, but also, I mean, you have appointments because you are trying to serve as many people, and
Yes.
you want, it's not just walk-in. You need to have an appointment.
It's definitely not walk-in. Right.
And I will just mention real quickly that at the end of the program today, we will be posting some information about where, when, and what appointments are available at which councils on aging. So if you didn't get all that, don't worry, it'll be posted at the end of the program. So the other going on, someone comes in. What are the things that a person who's coming to get their taxes done or hoping to get their taxes done, what are the top 3 or 4 things that they need to make sure they have with them? Because if they don't, then you're kind of stuck.
Right. Well, there's several things. Before I specifically answer that question, let me say that the news bulletins, newsletters, all in Berkshire County include information about what you should bring with you to an appointment. So if I don't sound like I'm giving you all the information that you're looking for today, that is available, and it's available from the senior centers if you call and ask the question.
And I think we had something in Berkshire Senior as well.
You did. Yeah. Yes. So identity theft is a big concern at the national level and at every level, to be honest. And in order to try to counteract any possibility of identity theft in the activity that we do, we require people to bring a photo ID and a Social Security card for every person that is going to be either filing a tax return or being claimed as a dependent on a tax return.
So that if they have that, then it allows you to be assured this is who this is for.
Yes, and then we can continue. So that's just getting through the door. If you don't have that, we're stuck, and we really can't do anything for you. But assuming that you have that, the next thing is all of the paperwork that you have for income, whether it's wages from employment, whether it's pension documents, a 1099 from a pension, or a Social Security statement. If you're itemizing deductions, you need a record of expenses that you're going to itemize. So it really varies a little bit depending on who you are and what your situation is. A very simple return would be a photo ID, a Social Security card, and a Social Security statement.
Now, we are now seeing more, and I know we see this in Berkshire County as well as across the country, more and more seniors are still working, whether it be part-time, full-time. So how does that play into, one, their eligibility for coming for this service, and two, just the kinds of things that they might need to bring?
There's no effect on the availability of the service. It doesn't matter if you're working or not working, or retired or not retired, or a student or retired person. It doesn't matter. If you're looking for help, we'll be glad to provide that help as long as there's appointments available. As far as what you bring, it's different for everybody, but in general, anything that you have in terms of documentation from an employer, from the government, from an investment that shows income for the year that you're filing taxes for, we need to see that paperwork.
Now, especially as retirees, people might have multiple places where they are receiving income. As you said, investments, pensions, other accounts, bequests, whatever it might be. How do you assess whether you're the appropriate place for someone to get their taxes done? I mean, do you ever run across, like, this is really beyond the scope of your services?
Yes. The AARP provides a reference document for us, and it identifies every form and schedule that anyone is likely to have with them when they come in for their taxes. And the common ones, like a 1099 or a W-2, it generally is not a problem. But if it's something a little bit different, we can reference this scope document. That's what we call it, a scope document. And it'll tell us, yes, this is in scope, you can do this, or no, this is out of scope, you can't do this. Or, for example, in the case of a business, someone has a business, a small business, there might be limitations on expenses, there might be limitations on income. If you're under these levels, yes, we can do it. If you're over these levels, no, we can't. There's also limitations. For example, a lot of people, especially in Berkshire County, have rental income. And that's another one that it can't, really, we can't do rental income. There are some very specific cases where we can, but in general, we can't. If you're renting out your home, renting out your cottage, renting out a condo, best to go somewhere else because it's out of scope for us.
Right, and I think, from the individual's point as well, I mean, they may need other advice, other counsel that is beyond, and they don't want to rely upon, I mean, it would put either one of you in an awkward spot, perhaps, if something didn't go right.
Correct.
Because they're depending upon you beyond your scope, and yet and it could cause issues for them down the road. So.
Right.
So one thing, do you folks do electronic filing?
Primarily, we do electronic filing. It's not required. We do have people that come in and say, I need help with my taxes, but I want to file paper, and that's okay. We print out the return, we give it to them, they can sign it and take care of it themselves. But I'd say 99% of the returns that we do, both federal and state, are filed electronically. Which, you know, it has a little bit of a downside, because returns that are filed electronically aren't automatically passing muster with either the IRS or the Mass DOR, Department of Revenue.
Okay.
When they receive the electronic file, they do checks, and occasionally they find something that says, whoa, wait a minute, we can't take this one. And in that case, we get a notification, and then we have to contact the taxpayer and work out whatever.
The notification comes back to you?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we have the ability to identify in our system which returns have been rejected because of something that didn't look right to either Massachusetts or the IRS. It's also true, though, that either the IRS or the Mass DOR might mail some kind of request to the taxpayer. For example, and we'll talk about this, I think, a little later, the senior circuit breaker is a common thing that people come in to have done or are included in their tax return. And the Massachusetts DOR has implemented certain surveillance kinds of things for people who are requesting circuit breaker credit. And in that case, their return shows as being accepted by the state, but the state then might do a review electronically, you know, automatically review of this return and say, wait a minute, we want to see some of this documented evidence of what you're claiming.
Right.
And in that case, they might write the taxpayer a letter, and then the taxpayer might call us and say, hey, I got this letter, and we assist them, if they want, to prepare that response and submit whatever it is that's being requested.
Well, that is a great segue, because we just this month had a article, thanks to Representative Tricia Farley-Bouvier, about the circuit breaker in Berkshire Senior, and it's in our new issue that just came out last week. But maybe help folks think about, what does that mean? Does the circuit breaker apply to them? I know a lot of times people think it doesn't, or that they don't need to worry about it, but they may be losing out. So how do you see and how do you interact with the circuit breaker law?
Every year we run into one or more taxpayers or people who say, well, I didn't file last year because my daughter, my son, my cousin, my neighbor, somebody told them that they don't make enough money, and so they're not required to file a tax return. And that is true. But if they don't file a tax return, then they can't participate in this senior circuit breaker. So the senior circuit breaker credit is a credit that a taxpayer is eligible for if they meet certain criteria. And I brought a little cheat sheet here just to make sure I don't get it wrong. And I'll just go down the list of, there are other things involved, but this is just a list of some of the top things. You must be 65 years of age or older at the close of the current tax year that you're filing for.
Okay. So in this case would be 2017.
Right. You must file a resident or part-year resident return. Non-residents don't qualify. The taxpayer must own or rent residential property in Massachusetts and occupy the property as his or her principal residence. So
they got to be a resident of Massachusetts.
a resident and a non-subsidized renter or homeowner.
Now, when you say non-subsidized, does that eliminate anyone living in public housing? Or what
If it's subsidized.
Okay. All right.
So I don't know a lot about public housing,
Okay,
but I
so-
have experienced taxpayers who live in public housing, but who do not participate in the subsidized
Yes.
portion of public housing.
Right.
So if they participate in the subsidized aspect of public housing, then no, they don't qualify.
Fine. Okay. All right.
There is an income ceiling, which it depends on their filing status, and it increases yearly, and there's tables and things that I don't have in front of me right now. So yes, there are income limits and income ceilings that don't qualify you to participate, but it's certainly better to ask the question and get the answer that no, you don't qualify, than it is to ignore the opportunity to get this credit back.
And what is the credit for?
It's a little hard to explain, but the state looks at it kind of this way, is that the municipalities all participate in bond funding for infrastructure programs, and property taxes pay some of that funding. So if you're a property taxpayer, they're looking for a way to compensate you in a way for this municipal funding aspect of how government works. So that includes property taxes that you pay on your residence. That includes municipal water and municipal sewer bills that you pay for a residence. And it includes rent that you pay that is not subsidized.
The assumption being, or the presumptions being, that if you're paying rent, you're contributing to all those things through your landlord,
Correct.
even if you're not paying them
Yes.
directly.
Yes.
And back to where you started, which is, even if you, by income, would not be required to file, filing allows you to apply for the circuit breaker.
It does. And take that example, someone who by income limit is not required to file, and if they filed the traditional way without including the circuit breaker, would get no refund, and also would pay no tax,
Right.
but would get no refund. If they qualify based on these kinds of criteria that we just talked about, the maximum for tax year 2017 is $1,080. So instead of getting $0 back because you didn't make enough money to file, you could get as much as $1,080 back, which is a big number
Which
for
is
a lot of people.
no small amount for anybody, especially living on a fixed income.
That's right.
When filing, do you file each year? So you have to apply, so you have to, if for 2017 you file for 2017, you file again for 2018, and you file each year.
Yeah, you have to do that each year because the criteria changes each year, taxes change each year. So yes, it's a every year thing.
Now, and the circuit breaker is a Commonwealth of Massachusetts
Yes.
issue. This is not a federal.
That's correct.
This is on your state taxes, not.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes.
So let's talk about federal taxes just for a minute, maybe a little more than a minute. A lot has been going on, especially in the news around at the end of the year, around federal taxes. What is your response if someone comes in or calls and says, are my taxes going to change? What is going to happen based upon the tax changes that were just voted on?
The vast majority of the changes that have been talked about in the news and in the newspapers apply to 2018, not 2017. So for 2017, all of that is essentially doesn't apply. There are a few things here and there that are retroactive, but for most people it's not a 2017 issue, it's for 2018. And we haven't gotten interpreted guidance for 2018 at all yet in terms of those changes, and we won't for some time. So we can answer that question maybe next year when we talk, but for this year, 2017, essentially no change from last year.
Okay. How do how can people, if we're sitting here today and we say we are thinking about next year, what are the types of things people can do starting now to be in a better place for next year than they are for this year?
Well, the thing that affects our volunteer community in terms of preparing taxes is the ability of the taxpayer to collect all of the information that we need to prepare their taxes. And beyond that, I would be getting into financial advice, which I don't really want to do. So the thing that helps you, the taxpayer, and helps us, the preparer, most is to bring that set of documents that we need to have in order to accurately prepare your return.
Would it be fair to say that a little too much information is better than a little too little information?
Yeah, well, there's two things that happen when you get to the little too little part. Sometimes, for example, someone comes in to have their taxes done, they're receiving Social Security payments, but they don't bring their Social Security statement, end of year statement. When that happens...
Which is like their W-2 for...
Right,
yeah.
Yes, it's their statement of income for the past year. When that happens, we're stuck. We can't prepare their return based on the previous year's numbers. We have to have the prior year, the tax year numbers.
And you can't just take one monthly statement and multiply it by 12 because things might,
No.
Yeah. You need the actual statement.
You need the actual statement, and that can be gotten from the Social Security office. It can be gotten online before coming in, but if you don't have it, we can't do it.
Is it typically sent to the individual, though?
Yes.
Okay, so if you get it and you just retain it, then you don't have to go Social Security, you don't have to go online.
Correct.
Because it will be sent to you.
Yes.
Okay.
The other side of that coin is that if someone doesn't bring in a document such as a 1099 from an investment or a 1099 from a pension, and we don't know about it, I mean, we ask questions, we interview people, we try to find out everything, but occasionally someone doesn't have a document. They might not even know they don't have a document. And of course, if they don't know, we don't know.
Right.
We prepare the return, and the government says, because the employer, for example, or an investment house files separately, so they know that an account had income. So the government looks at your tax return and says, wait a minute, you should have had a 1099 for this investment, or wait a minute, you worked at some grocery store or some restaurant or something, and you had a W-2 or a 1099 from there, but it's not on your tax return. So then they write letters and start asking questions.
But it's a good point to remind people, it is still your tax return.
Yes, and we remind every taxpayer before they leave our facilities that the information is their information, it's their tax return, and they're responsible for all of the numbers and all of the responses that might come from a review of their return.
I know it might be a little bit late for this year, but I do want to give you a chance to talk about volunteering, and if people are interested or if they think they might be interested, what would be the best course of action to take to help out maybe for next year's season?
We're always looking for volunteers. We have tax counselors which sit with people and prepare returns, and we have more administrative type positions that help taxpayers organize their paperwork and make sure that they have all of the required documentation before the taxes are done. And we're always looking for volunteers of that sort to fill those positions. You can go to the AARP.org website, and anyone that volunteers has to go there to fill out an online form. If that's difficult for you, you can contact your senior center where the taxes are done, and the senior centers can connect you with the people that can either help you with that application or find some alternative way of volunteering. But we'll get it done.
And do you need to be a CPA to do this?
You do not, but it helps.
I'm sure it does. What would you say is the number one thing that you need to just have to really feel comfortable in this?
Well, experience with a computer, you know, experience with internet things. You don't have to be an accountant. We do training every January or December and January to connect you with what's required to fill out the returns. And really a desire to kind of make a difference with people and help people in their daily life.
And is there always someone you can get help from as a volunteer? You referenced the manual before and other things like that. There's always
there's a whole array of state and federal information and people that we can always access to get responses.
Well, Ron, I want to thank you. You're a great guest, and it's about 2 years in a row, I think, for us.
Yes, it is.
And I'm sure it'll be 3 if we get together again next year. So
that's a commitment.
Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next month on Berkshire Senior TV.
If I'd been out till 2:45, would you lock the door? Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64?